So we're 5 years into this whole Sonic the Hedgehog film franchise, $1 billion worth of money into it. And it's weird to say we started with this. Meow. Yet with that first movie alone, it not only revitalized the Sonic franchise in general, with Sonic being at the forefront again after years of being in the shadow of even fucking Crash Bandicoot, but these films have revitalized how Hollywood even saw video game films in general, with the big blockbuster not being the new Marvel film, no, it's the Super Mario Bros. Movie. The Sonic the Hedgehog film franchise has had a crazy impact on not just Sonic, but film in general, and I don't talk about it. Yeah, if you know me, I personally don't talk much about the Sonic movies in comparison to how I talk about the other aspect of this franchise. Sure, I've expelled minor talking points about these films, but never truly expelled my thoughts, mainly because, you know, I'm not a film critic. Now, sure, I'm not a video game critic either, I wouldn't call myself that, but you know, I've been playing these Sonic games since I could pick up a controller, and I know what I like about these games, where in comparison, my favorite movie of all time is a Spider-Man movie. I am the most casual moviegoer of all time, so when I'm talking about these Sonic films, I can't say I entirely know what I'm talking about outside of the elements that are explicitly Sonic the Hedgehog. But now we're at the point where these films are wearing it on their sleeve. We're getting films with Shadow the Hedgehog, the Eclipse canon, and even Sonic music in the films after fans finally begging. So since we're at 3, not the finale but the end of the trilogy, I thought this would be a good place to stop and finally expel my thoughts on these films through the eyes of a weird Sonic fan. Do I love these movies because of how they take something I love and bring it into the movie form with its unique take on the franchise? Or do I hate it for not sticking accurately enough to the franchise I love? Well, there's a little more to it than that. So let's talk about the Sonic the Hedgehog movie franchise. The first Sonic film is weird, man. Rewatching this film is like taking a portal back in time because while this movie isn't bad, I don't think it's very good. Legitimately, after watching the third film, friends of mine both admitted that they don't even remember anything that happens in this movie, and I completely see why. The overall plot of the film is that Sonic is an alien who, after being hunted down on his own planet by Echidna warriors, is sent to Earth by his owl guardian Longclaw as a safe place to stay hidden. In this state of his life, he becomes lonely, watching all the townsfolk of Green Hills despite never being able to interact with them. But after having an emotional breakdown on a baseball field, he causes an energy spike, causing a blackout that leads to the government hunting him down, with the lead in the Sonic hunt being Dr. Robotnik. So whilst trying to escape in a ring in one of the townsfolk Tom's garage, he gets caught, causing Tom to shoot Sonic with a tranquilizer gun. And with Sonic seeing San Francisco on Tom's shirt while dropping the ring, it causes him to drop his bags of rings on top of the Transamerica building. So now Sonic and Tom must go on a road trip to San Francisco to get Sonic's rings, whilst evading Dr. Robotnik. Overall, the movie just ends up being fine. The first half is personally my favorite bit of the movie. We see a good amount of Sonic, learning about him as a person, how he's lived on Earth for these past 10 years, his loneliness. Well, Sonic is relatable. We also learn a little bit about Tom, but he's definitely not as focused on. Rightfully so, as this is Sonic the Hedgehog, but his motivation is that he wants to be a big city cop instead of a town sheriff. Weirdly enough though, the movie tries to paint this ambition as a bad thing, with Tom needing to stay in Green Hills with the people that love him. Like, he can't just call and come back to Green Hills on vacation. Moving doesn't mean you lose all your friends, Sonic. The final lap of the movie isn't bad either. It's where the action ramps up, and overall there's a lot of cool spectacle here. The chase between Sonic and Robotnik is super cool, and that final battle was super pleasing aesthetically. It's the middle that kind of leaves the movie feeling blah. From every little moment of Sonic in the car, because that makes sense for the fastest thing alive, or Sonic in a bar scene that just turns into a montage and a Quicksilver whip-off, the middle segment isn't bad overall, but it's just not good. It kind of just happens. Sonic does get some character work here in these segments, but it's not done in an entertaining enough fashion that it makes rewatching this movie super boring. Genuinely, when I went to go see this movie originally, I went in with super low expectations due to, but I honestly came out with a higher opinion due to it not being a total train wreck. Now with a better, more leveled opinion and 3 movies in, it's just a movie. Nothing about this feels Sonic outside of the blue CGI creature next to James Marsden, opposed to a bunny. Arguably, even Sonic as a character. Yeah, Sonic in these films takes a lot of liberty from really any of his previous iterations of the character. Sonic here is more of a child here, a kiddie-like character, and that's a version of the character a lot of fans have mixed on. You'll see, I'll never fall on the side of disliking movie Sonic because he's different. Like it or not, a lot of this franchise's success is owed to the fact that it has had many different interpretations throughout its 30-year lifespan. But I can hate Sonic because he can occasionally border on annoying. While ironically, I think he gets worse as the films go on, Sonic can feel a little too childish and the pop culture references feel just way too forced. But a character most people can agree is great is Dr. Robotnik. Not only just in terms of how the character acts, being very threatening yet still a silly character, but this being one of the silliest and therefore funniest versions of the character. I love Robotnik in these films. He's overall the best character in the entire movie for me personally. He's the one sign of life in this movie, and sucks he's not the main character to an extent because he's just so fun with his assistant Agent Stone adding a lot to the character.
Pin yourself to the wall.
Hot. Tom is also here. Yeah, he's just a dude. Like, again, his motivation for wanting to become a big city cop isn't that bad. I don't know why it tries to paint this as a bad thing. But other than that, he kind of is just the typical male sidekick character to the cartoony animal. Overall, while the Sonic the Hedgehog film has neat characters with interesting traits and struggles, the story does very little to actually entertain you with these characters for me personally, and it leads to an overall boring film. As for presentation aspects of the film, I thought I'd say it's pretty good. While the animation on Sonic isn't anything outstanding, I do think it's pretty well made, especially for the circumstances this film had to go through. And all the actors in the film do a good job. Ben does a great job portraying the Sonic he's given, reminding me a lot of his performance as Leonardo from TMNT, and on the human side, the actors do a solid job acting with tennis balls. And Jim Carrey overall being balls on the walls in this film is a real highlight, like I said earlier. The music in this film overall though is, it exists. There's like one track that sounds slightly like Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog's Robotnik's theme, but other than that, it's a generic film score. Green Hill Zone was expected, but Friends was a pleasant surprise. One thing I don't like about this film though is how it looks. It's really desaturated and gray a lot of the time, and quite frankly, it makes the film look really bad at times. Overall though, the Sonic the Hedgehog film is a fine film. It exists, it's super basic and doesn't exactly do anything special, even being a Sonic film. Sonic 2 is a pretty big improvement from Sonic 1 in a lot of ways. This film is the Citizen Kane compared to the first, where the first one is mostly boring, bland, most safe road trip film I've ever seen. Sonic 2 keeps me engaged almost all the time. Almost. The plot this time around is that after settling on Earth, Sonic is now trying to adjust to being a responsible hero during Tom and Maddie's Hawaii vacation, whilst also dealing with the new threat in the form of Knuckles, who thinks Sonic is hiding a Master Emerald, which his civilization had died fighting the Owls for. With Sonic being a descendant of Longclaw, he assumes Sonic has been hiding the Emerald the whole time. So after teaming up with Robotnik, it's now up to Sonic, oh, and Tails is here, to get the Emerald before Robotnik and Knuckles. Overall, the movie throughout is pretty good. The plot definitely lends itself better to an actual Sonic-like story, with the film being pretty entertaining through its runtime, for the most part. There are a few scenes in the film I do feel as if exist to pad out length, because this film needed to be 2 hours for some reason. For some reason, we get another bar scene, but instead of being a bar fight, we get a bar dance. Sonic and Tails need to get their map back from this one Siberian dude, and to do so, they have to dance for it. Yeah, instead of maybe a slow-mo scene like the last film, or another action scene, something more reasonable than a dance scene, it tries to show how Sonic instills confidence in Tails that he clearly lacks. But it just feels so dumb and forced, like an executive ordered the rights to Uptown Funk for a different movie, that movie got cancelled, and it was forced to the Sonic crew to add this. Like, you are Sonic the Hedgehog, why don't you just stop time and get the map? You've literally done it 3 times in these films so far. Then there's the wedding scene, which just goes on for way too long. Once Rachel knocks out the guards in the Four Seasons product placement area, the scene should have stopped there and we cut to Maddie rescuing Tom, Sonic, and Tails. But we continue on to see that Rachel and Randall's stupid relationship bullshit, and I don't think many people cared this much about this wedding scene subplot. We didn't need this long of a conclusion to it. Trust me, you could have resolved this as like an off-screen joke and no one would have questioned it. And lastly, there's the Wade scene. Now look, I may be looking at this scene through stained glasses after the horrors I have seen, but I do not care about Wade as a character. He's not a bad character, don't get me wrong, but he's just here. He doesn't really offer like anything to these films. He's supposed to be comic relief, but you can cut off my hands and I can still count the amount of times I've laughed at his scenes in these films. Thankfully though, the rest of the film is focused on the shit we care about. the furries. Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik are really the highlights in the scenes they're in. Tom and Maddie are also pretty good here too. Whilst I still think they're the most blank pieces of wood of all times in terms of actual personality, their clear role as parental figures to Sonic is really focused on here, and it's cute to see. Them wanting Sonic to have a squad, them wanting Sonic to be responsible, especially since they barely take up most of the movie. I think they're cute. The wedding scene was a good excuse to get them out of the film because we rarely see them until like the third act, and while that may upset some Donut Lord fans, all three of you, the less of these two the better, no offense. I do have a few qualms with the main three though, mainly Sonic and Tails. Knuckles here is overall perfect. From the first scene we see him alone, he's easily one of the best characters in the film. Like, this film alone made Knuckles feel like a real character again. He's not some dumb, strong guy. He's just a slightly gullible person who's not accustomed to Earth customs, giving him good comedic moments without turning him into a joke, especially since he's not stupid as we see going forward. Sonic is pretty fucking annoying in this movie. Whilst he's not awful to where I want to rip my ears off, the amount of fucking pop culture references he makes throughout this film is actually nuts.
Oh great, the Winter Soldier.
Shut your He just talks a lot, and quite frankly, I need him to shut the fuck up sometimes. Then there's Tails. You know, for being the post-credit scene in the last film, he really got shown up. Tails doesn't do anything in this movie. He's just kind of there, and once the bar scene is over, he becomes more of a background character than ever. There's a reason why in Japan this film is called Sonic vs. Knuckles the movie. He's just kind of there and it sucks. Dr. Robotnik is great here too. As his Eggman progresses throughout these films, we can really see the silly being upped. And quite frankly, it's super fun to see him just being a smartass to everyone despite being the silliest guy there. As for the presentation though, overall things remain the same. The already existing cast and crew does a great job. The movie still looks dull color-wise, but in my opinion, the movie definitely has more interesting shots than, you know, Sonic in a car. The animation is slightly better here too. Not really anything special, but you can tell there's a bigger budget animation-wise. And the music is the same old generic orchestral sound. Of course, we have new actors here, with Colleen O'Shaughnessy being the only voice actor to transfer from the games, with her reprising her role as Tails. With her doing a great job since 2013, I'm not surprised she's also great in this film. She does an amazing job. Then there's Idris Elba as Knuckles, with him actually delivering an amazing performance. He fits his version of Knuckles perfectly, and he really makes the character his own. Overall, Sonic 2 is, in general, a huge improvement from his predecessor. Less of the bad stuff, more of the good stuff. Let's hope this series keeps up the momentum. So taking a brief detour from the world of movies, Knuckles got so popular from Sonic 2 that Paramount saw fit to make a Paramount Plus series for Knuckles. Too bad it never released. Yeah, this is the most infamous piece of canceled Sonic media, because they even showed a trailer for it at the Super Bowl, saying that it would release on April 26, 2024, but it never came out, with them instead shadow dropping The Wade Show, which actually does feature Knuckles as a secondary character. The plot is that Wade is now trying to compete in a bowling tournament, whilst also dealing with abandonment issues from his fake British dad, who has also become a bowling star. And to help him, Knuckles, in search after another purpose after getting acclimated to living on Earth and finding the Master Emerald, decides to train Wade in the ways of the Echidna to help him compete in his bowling tournament, whilst also being hunted by a new villain who has hired 2 rogue gun agents to steal Knuckles' power. Overall, The Wade Show is fine. Like, as a show, it's fine enough. It doesn't really do anything egregious, but also, it doesn't really do anything special, and makes me wonder why Knuckles is even here. It's almost like that Knuckles show was too expensive, so they slid scenes from that into The Wade Show, especially with the first episode, the one that clearly had the biggest budget, featuring the most of Knuckles and even Sonic and Tails. But in general, this show just isn't anything I really care about because I don't care about Wade. Sure, we do learn more of his character, but the daddy issues just feel so forced. Nothing about him as a character is really interesting here. He's not funny, he's not entertaining, nor a compelling character in general. He's just Wade. Knuckles here is still pretty good though, with him feeling written just as he was in Sonic 2, but he does so little it feels like there was no point in putting him here personally. The main villain of the show also really only appears in like 2 episodes, the first and the final, so he's just there. Like, we don't even learn his name in the show. They told me it was the buyer on a fucking poster. The rogue gun agents are really the ones that do the most work in terms of being villains, and even then they only appear in a little over half of the episodes, and even then they're fine. They're Jesse and James level of comedic, which definitely seems intentional, and it does make them occasionally fun to watch, mainly Kid Cudi, but they rarely appear throughout the show that it makes them feel a tad forgettable outside of a few jokes. Then there's Wade's family, whose features mainly Maid's mom, and Wade's mom is actually pretty nice. I generally found her to be the best original character throughout the entire show. Her struggling to be a single mother who just wants to have a nice dinner with her kids for once, but she has Wade and for kids, is honestly so sad, and I like her talks with Knuckles. It's just cute. Then there's who's probably the worst character in this Sonic movie franchise. She's just so horrendously annoying and childish. Like, throughout this show, we see her just be a fucking brat, and she never has a single moment of changing. No, it's just kind of a bitch the whole way through the fucking show. Like, she stabs Wade with a fucking fork. This bitch is a psychopath. Then there's also Pachacamac. He's just there. In fact, I can say that for every character in the show. Whilst this show is probably fun to make, none of the side characters really add anything overall. Jack Sinclair just gives us a stupid musical sequence that explains Knuckles' backstory, because showing it in a cool, interesting way would have been too expensive. Pistol Pete is just a plot device to make us somehow like Wade, and overall, these characters just aren't characters, they just exist. As for presentation, I guess everything is fine. Music is nothing special. Knuckles and Pachacamac are actually animated pretty well, probably why we barely see them. Same can be said for Sonic and Tails in the first episode, even if they had some weird looking shots. All the actors do a good job portraying their characters though. Everyone did a pretty solid job, except for you, Kid Cudi, I'm sorry.
Lil Pig, where are you?
Overall, like I said, the Wade show isn't good, but it's not bad. Like, really, who wanted this? Who genuinely was like, I need a show of Wade from the Sonic movies? Because I don't know how anyone could enjoy this. None of the characters are interesting or matter besides like the main two. The plot isn't that interesting, and it's not even a funny comedy show. This just sucks. Wait, huh? Wait, yeah? What do you mean this is the Knuckles show? You guys, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is really fucking good. Now look, I'm gonna be so for real when I say I went into this film with my expectations in hell. In case you don't know, Sonic Adventure 2 is genuinely my favorite video game of all time, with Kirby and the Forgotten Land being a very, very close second. So I genuinely went in, of course, not expecting to 100% faithfully adapt Sonic Adventure 2, because it's just not how these films go. But the marketing was not instilling any hope that they're gonna do the game I love any justice. Shitty posters, awful music, Sonic the Fighter's models in the credits. Let's just say, when I sat down to watch the film, I was cautious. And well, I was blown away. Sonic 3's plot is that after being trapped for 50 years due to being deemed too dangerous to roam, Shadow, with the help of Gerald Robotnik, finally breaks free. And now, he and Gerald are out to seek revenge after losing Gerald's granddaughter and Shadow's friend, Maria, with them both intending to use the Eclipse Cannon and not only destroy Gun headquarters, but the entire planet along with it. So it's up to Team Sonic to defeat them, in which Sonic has to learn to work as a team and not let anything change who he is on the inside. Overall, I think Sonic 3 does a good job telling its story. Shadow, being this really tragic character who's hell-bent on revenge, genuinely was really entertaining to watch, and even got a few tears out of me, I won't lie. Gerald is also pretty good too. Being portrayed by Jim Carrey and acting with Jim Carrey is probably one of the best things this team could have done, and it's super funny of how he acts off of himself. Maria is also an aspect that I even think outdoes her game counterpart. Whilst Maria in the games feels like her character hinges on just being the nicest person in the franchise, therefore allowing Shadow to see the good in most things, Maria in this film feels like a real person. Like, she's actually feels like a kid that isn't just some goody two-shoes and is really nice. She just feels like a normal young girl who can be mischievous or childish, and it makes her death extremely upsetting. I do have one minor issue with the story though, having kind of awful pacing. The film is the second shortest in the franchise, and you really feel it. Not only do certain scenes just not get enough time to linger, but sometimes scenes just randomly cut, and it's quite ungraceful. The returning characters are still just as good as always though. Tails is honestly the biggest glow up of everyone, with him coming up consistently well throughout our plans throughout the film that make him feel a lot more important than his appearance in Sonic 2. Knuckles is also good as always. He still has a good brand of comedy, being slightly gullible but still smart. Sonic is the only character I feel frankly gets worse. His stupid quips and pop culture references are more abundant than ever here, and I feel that it's just unnecessary and unfunny. There's a reason Konichi Watt became a joke, and it's not because the joke was funny. Sonic only really gets bearable once he actually locks in after Tom damn near dies and after he realizes revenge isn't good. He goes back to being this though. Yeah, I do like how they merge the lessons Sonic learns with teaching it to Shadow, showing him that revenge isn't good, and despite Maria being gone, she'll be always with him. Good stuff. Overall, Team Sonic is actually quite good in this film. Whilst I do find Sonic himself a tad annoying at times, but overall, the entire team, they're good. Really good. They argue right together, and they all feel connected and even better than games occasionally, in my opinion. Tom and Maddie are also better integrated into the story, in my opinion. Whilst in the beginning, they're just kind of out of the story, in the middle, the movie allows them to actually join in on the action, then becoming spies of sorts to help Team Sonic get through GUN headquarters. Well, they're not cool, they're entertaining as a couple to watch. I especially do love how Tom acts off of Sonic, acting like a legitimate father, giving him inspirational quotes. We do have another new character though, with director Rockwell. She exists. For real, throughout this film, she doesn't really do much. She just kind of becomes mean to Team Sonic in the beginning of the movie because of a misunderstanding. But other than that, like one scene, she doesn't add much. As for other elements of the film, I can say there was a huge improvement. The color grading in this movie is leagues above the last two. More interesting shots in general, and the music is still really bland for the most part. Yeah, people were gassing the stuff like the small chord progressions being ripped from games is something special, but it's so minor you won't hear it. There are a few songs ripped from the franchise though, like Eggman's theme from 06 and onward. Green Hill Zone of course appears, and Live and Learn is pretty commonly used even as a Letty motif through the film until we hear it fully in the climax. There was clearly an attempt to make the music better in this film, with even the songs being named after Sonic quotes, but this movie also has Run It, and that's a crime against anyone who isn't a cracker. The animation has also gotten a huge upgrade. The CGI characters look better than they ever have before. Of course, more action scenes allow them to shine more often, but this film doesn't have too many of those ugly shots of the characters like the last Toon film would occasionally have. Everybody also gives a great performance. Keanu does a great job as Shadow, even if I do wish he put a lot more effort into a voice. Like, he's not bad, and definitely a great pick for Shadow, but he just sounds like Keanu Reeves, and, you know, just Keanu Reeves. Like I said, Jim Carrey does a great job playing Gerald, being silly but also extremely threatening at times, and everyone else who is returning in their roles does a good job. Overall, Sonic 3 is really good. Like, really good. While it ain't perfect, it isn't anywhere near bad. The characters are great, the story is great, and as the biggest Sonic Adventure 2 lover, this is really good. So overall, most of the Sonic movies aren't my ideal versions of this franchise. I do enjoy it. It's their own version of the franchise that is doing something unique, and I think it has overall done a good job cementing itself as a pillar of the franchise. While I do overall have the concern that this will affect Sonic in the cultural zeitgeist, with people going forward seeing Sonic as a movie icon opposed to a video game icon, and how this will even affect the games themselves going forward, we can already see it affecting external media like Sonic Prime clearly taking heavy inspiration from the films in terms of Sonic's personality, but as their own thing, in their current form, I think these are good. While Sonic 1 is a movie, Sonic 2 and 3 are overall good, entertaining films. They're fun, and just a good time to watch. I feel if you just enjoy standard movies, and if you're a Sonic fan who can realize adaptations don't have to be 100% accurate, you'll enjoy these. As for the future for this franchise, I can't say I'm horrendously excited. Not only because I think the film should have stopped at 3, like that's always just a perfect number to stop at in my opinion. But also, I don't know how you top this. Shadow the Hedgehog is just really cool, and I don't think Metal Sonic has that sauce as a villain. And Amy as a character is something I am not looking forward to at all. Not only just going by her character in current media and how she's just boring, but also that's just kind of how films will portray most female characters as just strong women. I'm not exactly looking forward to Amy. But even if the films go downhill, or if they just stop being good or stop making money, I enjoyed the first 3. Knuckles can kinda go die in a fire, but other than that, I enjoyed Sonic the Hedgehog's films.